Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. President Biden's presser yesterday. Much of the questions were about the effort to federalize elections that failed yesterday because Manchin and Sinema held out on the filibuster vote. And, of course, that was the occasion, this topic, was the occasion for Biden to shoehorn in his blame Trump and Trump's hold on Republicans as the reason why he can't get bipartisan support for this federalization of elections, and that they're in league with Donald Trump to, say it with me, suppress the vote and subvert the count.
Did you ever think that one man out of office could intimidate an entire party where they're unwilling to take any vote contrary to what he thinks should be taken for fear of being defeated in a primary? I've had 5 Republican senators talk to me, bump into me, quote unquote, or sit with me, who've told me that they agree with whatever I'm talking about for them to do. But Joe, if I do it, I'm going to defeat it in a primary.
Mm-hmm. Oh, which 5? Please give names.
Yeah,
I would love
to
know.
Yeah, of course, that's not going to happen.
Is it even true?
So it's Republicans who won't join him in preventing the manipulation of elections to prevent voter suppression, to prevent election subversion. It's Republicans and the holdouts, I guess, on the filibuster who are at risk of producing illegitimate election results. And then he's asked by RealClearPolitics.com's Philip Wegman about the 2022 elections, and he says this.
In regards to 2022, sir, the midterm
2022,
elections.
I mean, imagine if those attempts to say that the count was not legit. You have to recount it, or we're not going to count, we're going to discard the following votes. I mean, sure, I'm not saying it's going to be legit. It's the increase in the prospect of being illegitimate is in direct proportion to us not being able to get these reforms passed.
So if my legislation doesn't pass, then the outcome of the 22 election is illegitimate. Now, who's undermining our elections? Who's moving against our democracy? Who's moving in the direction of authoritarianism? Because, I mean, I hasten to add, I mean, no member of the press corps would bring this up because I'm sure few have read the document, but Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof.
Okay.
But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the places of choosing senators. That's the rest of the operative clause. And so if Congress fails to make or alter such regulations, then the elections are illegitimate. The elections in red states. And I guess for Republicans who would win in blue states. Illegitimate. For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Salena Zito. She, of course, is at salenazito.com, longtime Beltway reporter from outside the Beltway, which is why we like her, a national political reporter and author of The Great Revolt Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. Salena, thanks for joining us as always. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. And so Joe Biden, Trump, and the Republicans are subverting our elections, but if I don't get my way, the elections have been subverted. Or I guess, and if I don't get my way, the elections have been subverted. So 2022 is illegitimate as we stand here today because he hasn't got his federalization legislation done.
Yeah, that's, wow. There were several things in that press conference that were said yesterday, and that were ones that are going to be dissected for months. And that one is definitely at the top of my list. I don't know, 9 months before the next election, and he has already planted a flag and saying, if I don't get my way, then these elections don't count. And nothing weakens democracy more than saying that the elections aren't fair, that the elections are illegitimate. This is what we base our whole founding on in terms of trust and structure. And that was a foolish thing to say. I don't care what side of the aisle that you're on. That was a very damaging statement to make.
I mean, the question that was asked of Trump over and over again is, will you accept the results of the elections? And he sort of hedged, maybe I will. We'll see how it goes. And that drew some understandable criticism. But there's no criticism here for somebody who's announcing before we're even sort of in full operation, before anybody's cast a ballot, that I'm already saying if this legislation doesn't pass, then the election, no, I will not accept the results of the election. It will have been subverted. It will be illegitimate. So I guess every election, including his own previous to this, has been illegitimate because we haven't had this federalization, but up until this point proposed.
Well, and I think so. Biden was supposed to be the antidote to Trump, right? Not in particular on his policies, but on his behavior and his disposition. People mostly didn't like Trump because of the way he presented himself, as opposed to some of the policies. Most of his policies were traditional establishment conservative policies. However, it was his personality and the instability that he sometimes projected that people were rejecting. Well, Joe Biden just went and did the exact same thing, and even worse. And yet there's barely a blink of the eye coming from my profession because he was the guy that wasn't Trump. So it's going to be okay if the guy that wasn't Trump says something outrageous and demoralizing to our democracy. But, so I think, if you look at the Edelman, Edelman every year has the trust barometer, right? How we trust large institutions in this country and across the world. And one of the biggest hits again taken was by trust in the media, and how the media has handled this it shows that they have earned that lack of trust because it is cratered once again.
Salena, I wanted to ask you, because you've traveled all over the Midwest, all over the country. Have you ever met anyone whose vote was suppressed?
No. And I have spent, not just the Midwest, I spend a lot of time in the South. I spend a lot of times in very rural white communities and lots of times in urban minority communities. And no one has ever said that. Now, has there been a mix-up? Had they had to wait? Was their vote, I forget what the term used, but they had a way to confirm. Maybe someone moved and they forgot to change their address. There's been a delay. But no, that has never, ever happened in my gazillion years of covering American politics.
And of course, none of this is to say that there isn't skullduggery afoot from time to time in particular places more endemic than others. I mean, we all know in Cook County about controlled votes and precinct captains voting for people in their precinct. We know, we know about Black Panthers standing outside polling places in Philly. I mean, so yes, there's always these efforts to intimidate, subvert is too strong a word, manipulate. And so this is why you have ballot integrity programs. This is why you have election judges. This is why you have local and state attorneys. And so you have to, moderate and regulate these processes, these electoral processes. But the idea that there is a conspiracy in Texas and Georgia and Florida to prevent black people from voting, which is basically what he's saying, is so absurd that it wouldn't even require discussion, but for the absurdity of our time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if it was 100 years ago, oh, no, maybe it was 150 years ago, that that would be open for discussion. However, it's not, and this has not been the case, and it's insulting to black voters to continuously insinuate that, as if they can't even stand up and say, "Hey, my vote isn't being counted."
What do you think the impact of the Bojo announcement across the pond yesterday will have on Biden administration policy with respect to COVID? Boris Johnson announcing essentially COVID regulations are over in England.
Well, it's been interesting throughout this entire pandemic. We have always, whether it was an infection rate or how we've prosecuted the virus, have sort of followed whatever happened in the UK, whether by design or just by migration. So it will be really interesting to see what happens here. In light of that, I think maybe in 2 weeks we'll have a better understanding.
But I wish somebody would have brought that up yesterday at the press conference, to President Biden, saying, COVID's over in the UK. When are we going to have that day? When is that we're going to have the reckoning that, when will that happen?
Well, so some of my frustrations with press conferences is, and as a reporter, is oftentimes you go in there with questions that your editor wants you to answer, questions that your editor thinks is interesting, or compelling, except most editors are located in Washington, D.C. or New York City. And so I think a lot of questions that people that live outside those areas weren't asked, and that for me that was a continuous frustration, no matter who's president.
Biden the Fabulous struck again, and I don't know that this has been picked up anywhere. A friend of mine caught this, and I'm glad she did. He said, I'm quoting from the transcript from the press conference, I taught constitutional law for 20 years, a 3-credit course on the separation of powers. And on Saturday mornings when I was a senior, and I never thought we'd get into a place where we were actually talking about being able to actually, and then, he just babbled on. He taught con law for 20 years. Is that true? Where's Glenn Kessler? Can anybody fact check that for me? Because, Biden has sort of an off-again, on-again relationship with the truth.
With the truth. Exactly. I think he was, this happens often with politicians, right? After they leave office or while they're in office, they're given these sort of lofty titles, and they never really do anything with it other than to say, this is part of my resume and my status. That he physically did that, I don't, I covered him for a very long time. If anybody's not familiar with me, I live in Pennsylvania, and Biden always said he was the third senator from Pennsylvania. So he was someone that we always covered. And to my recollection, I don't remember him doing that for 20 years. Maybe he did it for a semester. Maybe he came in and did it once, like once a year, and counts 20 times as 20 years. However, to my recollection, I don't remember that being part of his resume.
Well, also, to be fair, a semester versus 20 years, that's a rounding error in D.C.
Right.
So that's well within the margin of error.
Well, it says on his Wikipedia that he graduated from Syracuse Law in 1968 and that he occasionally would teach at Windermere University, Delaware Law School.
Yeah.
But taught occasionally courses on constitutional law.
Uh-huh.
So that
occasionally for 20 years, I guess. I don't know.
I'm just curious. I just wanted to, maybe add that to his resume. I don't want him to get cheated in terms of all that he's accomplished. You know what I mean? Salena Zito, national political reporter, author of The Great Revolt: Inside the Populist Coalition, Reshaping American Politics. Check out her work at salenazito.com. Salena, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You've switched to Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I've been teaching my sweet 86-year-old grandma how to use her Alexa. The other day, I'm overhanging out and I see Grandma about 4 inches from Alexa yelling, "Hey, Alexa, I'm making cookies. Tell me when it's 10 minutes." It's Ryan from United Faith Mortgage, and the reality is the mortgage world has changed from old school to new school as well. In the old days, you usually use somebody local, but today, you don't have to be local to be local. You don't have to set up an appointment to see me. You'll have my cell and you can text or call me anytime. The Stone Age paperwork of old is now, usually just some easy clicks. And if you're refinancing, in most cases, we'll just send a notary to your home for your closing. The level of attention that we bring will make us feel very local for you.
We are United Faith Mortgage.
And one other advantage?
Read how our direct lender advantage can often save your family monthly and lifelong money at UnitedFaithMortgage.com.
United Mortgage Corp, Melville, New York. NMLS number 1330. Ryan Vreck, NMLS number 65233. For all licensing information, go to NMLSConsumerAccess.org.
All right. As you know, Mike Lindell has a passion to help you get the best sleep of your life, but he didn't stop by simply creating the best pillow. Mike has a full line of bedding items, and you're in luck because it's time, drum roll please, for the MyPillow January bedding sale. Yes, right now, if you visit MyPillow.com and click on the radio listener specials box, you will get 50% off Mike Lindell's comfiest sleepwear, sheets, 2-inch mattress toppers, blankets, quilts, and comforters. Get 50% off when you use promo code Amy. That's half off at the MyPillow January bedding sale using promo code Amy.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
I'm Chuck Spaveri, CEO of Spaveri's Custom Counters, a Chicagoland manufacturer of residential and commercial countertops. If there's a local commercial bank who knows how to get a deal done, it's Signature Bank. When my brother and I needed it, Signature Bank came through with a creative financing solution. That's because Signature Bank has experience working with companies like ours, a second-generation, family-owned and operated manufacturer. Our business matters to Signature Bank, and that comes through in every visit and every phone call with their team, right up to the bank's co-founders, Kevin, Mick, and Brian. Spaveri's is proud to bank with Signature Bank.
Signature Bank is looking for their next success story. To learn more about turning your business vision into reality, visit signaturebank.bank. Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.